here. So let's go ahead and get started. Last time in Monday's class, if you're able to watch the online video, in Monday's class we talked about the purposes of business. We talked about our purposes as individuals in business, what we want to go into, and we also talked about the purpose as such of the business enterprise. Okay, and I'm not going to repeat all of that by any means. I'm going to do just a quick exercise here at the beginning of class, and then we're going to move on and talk about an alternative theory to the Friedman theory that I mentioned on Monday. But I do want us to take 2 minutes and to write down in our notebooks what we aim to accomplish and do in the course of our lives in business. Most of us are going into some kind of business, or maybe we will at some point in our lives. What is your purpose in business? Why business? What do you aim to accomplish? What do you hope to do by going into this field? Why do you want to do this? Okay, just take 2 minutes, write that down. This will be a helpful exercise, and then we'll move on to a substantive study of the materials for today. Take about 1 more minute here. Okay, let us go ahead and listen to some of the answers. What are some of the answers that you guys were able to come up with? Some people shout them out for us. Why do you want to go into business? Make money? Great reason. Okay, great reason to go into business. One thing that I do want to emphasize in the course of the semester is that I think that you definitely can have that as one of your reasons. I don't think it should be the only reason for going into business. I think that there are healthy and unhealthy approaches to the idea of making money, and we're going to talk about the difference between them, but I think that that's a good reason. Other reasons for going into business. Why? Yes?
I would like to open a clinic.
Open a clinic? Why do you want to open a clinic? You gotta shout.
I would like to open a clinic in third world country.
In the third world country to help people?
Yeah.
Okay, so as to be able to help people. Okay, that's a great reason to help customers, clientele, things like that. Other reasons. Why go into business? What did people write down? Yeah.
I guess to have a job so you can provide for your family.
Yeah, man, that's a great reason. To provide for friends and family. I love that reason. Okay, last time we talked about some good reasons and bad reasons for us as individuals to go into business. We also introduced last time the idea of the purpose of business as such. And for a quick review, we covered an article, as you know from the video, by Milton Friedman. And in this article, Friedman argued that the point of the business as such is for the owners to receive profits from management because they pony up the capital so as to provide management with a basis for running the business. So because owners pony up the capital, on Friedman's view, the point of business is to make money, or technically speaking, the point of business is to do as the owners desire, but the point of business is almost always to make money for the owners because that is almost always what they desire. Okay, today we're going to cover a second view, an alternative view for the purpose of business, the stakeholder view. And I want to introduce this. I want to start off introducing this by means of a case study. So let's go through this case study together. Let me make sure that this is working. Okay. Quick innovation here using high-tech resources. Thanks for bearing with me. Wasn't anticipating this. That's all right. We'll see if this works out. Okay, I don't think that's going to hold. Rachel, can you come sit in this chair and hold this for me? Thank you. Sorry to pick on you, but you did get to sit in the front row. So. Thank you. Okay, just hold that right there. Wait, it's holding itself. Yes? It is. Okay, thank you. You may go back. Okay. Starbucks is going to be the case study that I'm going to use today to introduce the stakeholder view. Okay, this is a company that we're all very familiar with and some of us frequent. Yes? Who is a Starbucks customer? A couple of us? Okay. Those of you who go to Starbucks, why Starbucks? What's that?
It's convenient.
Convenient. They're everywhere, aren't they? Yeah. Serve very tasty coffee. Okay. Does anybody go there because of the atmosphere? That's one of the big things about Starbucks is a welcoming atmosphere, kind of reflective, meditative. People can sit there, sip their coffee, read a paper, work on their laptop, things like that. Okay. Let's look at some of the key principles about this company. Here's a quote from their website. Our stores are a neighborhood gathering place for meeting friends and family. Our customers enjoy quality service, an inviting atmosphere, and an exceptional beverage. Okay, so they intend actively for their customers to be drawn into the store and to remain in the store. Yes, because they will spend more money that way, but also because they intend to create some sort of a community situation that the customers will be benefited by. We believe in treating our partners with respect and dignity. We are proud to offer 2 landmark programs for our partners: comprehensive health coverage for eligible full and part-time partners, and equity in the company through Beanstalk. This is a quote from the website. This is not in keeping with Friedman's view of the purpose of a company. For Friedman, if you've seen the video from Monday, the point of the company is to make money for management. But here's a quote from the website saying that they're actually prioritizing employees. Comprehensive health coverage, equity in the company, that's not necessarily money making that they're prioritizing there, at least for owners. In fact, actually, just an FYI, Starbucks is one of the best places to work if you're a college student. They have excellent health coverage, really, really great treatment of their employees. A good place to work that way. Here's another quote. We've always believed in serving the best coffee possible. It's our goal for all of our coffee to be grown under the highest standards of quality, using ethical sourcing practices. Our coffee buyers personally travel to coffee farms in Latin America, Africa, and Asia to select high-quality beans. Okay, this is another reference that doesn't seem to be in keeping with Friedman's view of the purpose of a company. Because this is a reference where they're talking about their suppliers, and they're actually asserting that they think an important part of their profit pie should go to their suppliers. A couple of other comments about Starbucks. Starbucks believes that conducting business ethically and striving to do the right thing are vital to the success of the company. They consider their employees partners. Ethical sourcing, environmental stewardship are emphasized. They are a company-owned system, not a franchise system like Chick-fil-A, so each individual store is company-owned. Okay, and so what I want to emphasize in the course of this presentation is that this company is a counterexample to the owner-based or shareholder-based view of the purpose of a company. Of course, they serve a variety of products, blends of coffee, handcrafted beverages, merchandise. Lots of Starbucks fanboys are willing to pony up money to buy merchandise from them. Fresh food. I like their pumpkin bread personally. Let's talk about the 2 stakeholders that I emphasized before. One stakeholder that gets top billing at Starbucks is the employees. Employees are paid above the legally mandated minimum wage. Starbucks also offers educational scholarships. Suppliers are also prioritized. Starbucks suppliers are composed of wholesale supply firms and coffee farmers. The firm's supplier diversity program ensures that more suppliers from around the world are included in the supply chain. In addition, Starbucks Coffee and Farmer Equity Program requires transparency among wholesale suppliers to ensure that coffee farmers are properly paid. So these are 2 stakeholder classes that are excluded entirely from the Friedman view of the purpose of a company, but are prioritized at Starbucks. They also do things like community prioritization, big on environment and corporate social responsibility. And again, actually, they do prioritize owners because owners have been heavily benefited by virtue of this this company's publicly traded stock. It is a publicly traded company. Okay, so Starbucks is a counterexample to the Friedman view because it has interest in carving up the profit pie for a variety of different stakeholders. All right, now let me talk about a couple of other issues to do with this company, starting with controversies. Starbucks is a company that is not run certainly on Christian principles. It's run by persons who are generally of secular conviction, and so the company has gotten into some controversy for some of its anti-religious stances. For instance, they were well known for instructing their baristas not to say Merry Christmas to customers. They weren't allowed to say Merry Christmas to customers because Starbucks is trying to make it a general festival holiday and not a Christian holiday. This was a couple of years ago. At that point, apparently like a bunch of evangelicals started going into Starbucks and giving their names to the baristas as Merry Christmas, so that the baristas had to say Merry Christmas to them. This is not a good way to represent your Christian faith. If you want to be publicly, if you want to publicly manifest your Christian faith, go out and serve the poor or something. Don't make yourself obnoxious. Red Cup controversy. Starbucks has attempted in various holiday fare to remove religious imagery and just to promote its own branding. Strengths of this company, they lead the coffee market. They have very, very strong brand. When was the last time you saw a Starbucks advertisement? They don't really advertise, do they? They don't need to advertise. Their brand is so strong and their stores are so ubiquitous, they're everywhere, that they have a very powerful presence without having to advertise. They operate in numerous countries worldwide. Their numerous locations allow them to reach a larger market. Lots of brand awareness, strong customer loyalty. My dad goes to Starbucks every day. My mother has offered to buy him, several times actually, a Starbucks coffee machine so that she can make it for him at home just the way Starbucks does it. And he has always turned her down, and his reasoning has been, it's not Starbucks. So, I mean, if people like that are willing to, like my dad, are willing to go to Starbucks every day and pay a lot of money for their coffee, it's the most expensive cup of coffee on average in America. That's pretty strong customer loyalty that they're able to foster. Weaknesses, like I mentioned, expensive. Very, very expensive drinks on average compared to other coffee operators who provide similar kinds of products. Increasing competition. They don't have as much control over their stores outside the United States. One weakness that this company has is manifested in recessions. Expensive products, a lot of the time, not always, but often during recessions, companies that sell them don't do very well at all. And the reason is because when times become difficult, people drop the luxuries and just focus on necessities. If you have to choose between a tank of gas and a cup of Starbucks, you're going to choose the tank of gas if the money is tight. Opportunities for this company, global expansion. There are many other places around the world where they can profitably expand, branch out, open more stores. They also have recently been branching out into co-branding with supermarkets to provide supermarkets with some Starbucks products. Threats include competition from cheaper alternatives, like McDonald's, for instance, Dunkin' Donuts. I personally am somewhat skeptical that McDonald's would ever be able to compete with Starbucks when it comes to coffee. When you think of McDonald's, you think greasy food, right? I mean, that's what we all think of, is greasy, fatty, tasty food. It is tasty. But at the same time, when a company is so closely associated with a particular kind of food and particular branding, and it's just that for that company, it can become pretty hard to change their branding image. I think it would be very difficult for McDonald's to become seen as a coffee place. If people's tastes were to move away from coffee, then Starbucks would become less successful. This is a highly recognized company for their ethical choices. I have a lot of respect for this company. This is not a Christian company, not run by Christians, but the management that runs this company has at least my respect, because they spend a lot of time prioritizing the things that I think matter in business, including especially their employees and also their suppliers. Are there any questions about this particular case study before I use it as a launching pad to talk about the theory component for today's lecture? Any questions or comments about Starbucks?
What kind of criteria do you have to have
to get recognized?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So you have to not have any fraudulent behavior or anything on your books. You have to have a record of treating the people with the least power in your company very well. Sometimes you'll see companies that are incredibly hierarchically run for the sake of the management, and not for the sake of the little people. Here's an example of a company that's that way. So one of the worst places to work in America in terms of employee benefits, if you're someone who doesn't have mid-level management or above status, is Walmart. They just don't pay very well. They regularly work their employees 29 hours a week, so they don't have to pay them the health insurance that they would have to do if they were working them 30 hours a week. Now, a lot of people who are on the margins of the workforce do get jobs at Walmart. Elderly people, ex-cons, people who otherwise wouldn't be hireable at various places, people who have difficulty speaking English, things like that. But at the same time, it's a company that's run for the sake of management and not for the sake of the employees, at least the lower level employees. One could also argue that Walmart is run for the sake of customers. If you look at the finances, they offer products much more cheaply than other similar stores. So that case could be made, but I think it would be almost impossible to make the case that they actually are run for the sake of their employees, at least the lower level ones. Typically, in order to get awards like this, your company has to have a clean record, and it also has to be willing to look after the interests of those parties in business that tend not to have much power. Good question. Other questions about the Starbucks case? Let us keep that case in mind, and I want to use that case as a springboard right now to talk a little bit about the second model of the purpose of the company. And let me see if I can undo my own knot real fast. I can. Rabbit's got to go out the hole, around the tree, and back into the hole. You remember that from Boy Scouts? Sort of, maybe. Was anybody else taught that way, that theory of knot making? Maybe this is just back when I was growing up. Let's talk about the stakeholder view. And give me just 1 second to pull this video and move it into a location where the people online can see the board. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's talk about the stakeholder view. I'm going to go ahead and erase this since I've got to be able to videotape all my notes, but I'm talking about the stakeholder view when I draw this diagram. The main alternative to Milton Friedman's view, the shareholder or owner-based view of the purpose of the company, of a business enterprise, is the stakeholder view. And on the stakeholder view, the business itself, which exists because it makes profits that are for the greater overall good than would otherwise be the case. The business itself is composed of a variety of stakeholders. Okay, and I'm going to talk about each one of these stakeholders in turn. Let me just make one quick editorial comment. Mayo, I'm not picking on you. I see you on your phone. Okay, please put that away. You taking notes? Taking notes? Okay, please put your phone away and take notes either by hand or some other way, okay? Because once the devices are open, I can't control the devices, okay? That goes for everybody. When you come into class, please put your phones out in front of you, face down. Okay, and let's just make a habit of that. Let's go ahead and do that right now, actually. We'll just start making a habit of that each day. Not picking on you, man. It's just I forgot to mention it earlier, and so I'm just mentioning it now, okay? Cool? Cool, cool? Good deal. All right, back to the lecture. Businesses are composed of a variety of stakeholders. And these stakeholders include, of course, owners. They are absolutely one of the stakeholders in business because they provide the capital that is necessary for the business to be able to operate. Additionally, there are also suppliers. They provide the raw products that the businesses use to operate, that the businesses then bring to market in some more finished state. Additionally, there are also the employees. no business would be functional without the workers, skilled and unskilled, who are capable of taking the supplier's raw goods and turning them into products or offering services. Okay, additionally, there are some more peripheral kinds of stakeholders that are still arguably important components of the success of the business. One is the community. Okay, another is the government. And last but not least, certainly not least, because they are an important stakeholder in bringing about the success of the company, the customers. Okay, let's talk about each one of these 6 stakeholders and talk about the roles that they play in the success of your average business. And I'm gonna, I'll just use the Starbucks case first, and then I'll take a couple of other cases to talk about other kinds of companies that are run differently. Okay, Starbucks owners. Starbucks is a publicly traded company. Its owners are its creditors and also its equity shareholders. Okay, they provide Starbucks with capital. The suppliers are the various coffee farmers around the world where Starbucks gets its coffee beans. Employees, the baristas, the truck drivers who bring the products to each store. Community, a bunch of Starbucks, a lot of Starbucks is built on the labor of workers who have been educated in knowing how to run spreadsheets efficiently, knowing how to balance accounts, et cetera, That requires input from the surroundings, from the community, including especially educational institutions. Government provides Starbucks with a stable environment in which to operate, stable roads for transporting their goods from one store to another, defense forces, police forces that provide an orderly society. Okay, and then without the customers, of course, Starbucks' products would not be sellable. Now, Starbucks is an example, I think, of a company that does a pretty good job dividing up the profit pie relatively equitably among a variety of different stakeholder classes. The big criticism of the stakeholder view, and I'll just write the view up here, the big criticism of the stakeholder view as a view of the way businesses should be structured is that it is too idealistic. It is too difficult to put into practice. It is not the sort of a view that could legitimately, on a widespread basis, be implemented in different companies. Okay, let me offer you guys an example of a company that doesn't necessarily do a good job of meeting all the needs of all of its stakeholders. The example I'll use is Apple. I know most of us have iPhones. I'll show you guys an antique. This is a 4S. 4S. Didn't think you'd ever see an iPhone that old, huh? Like, wow. Ooh. It still runs. Does texts, does calls, does everything I need. I'm cool with it. I don't need to play Candy Crush. I'm cool. Apple is a company that is wildly profitable. Incredibly profitable business model. Their margins are enormous. Okay, Apple charges about 40 to 45% more than competitors do. So when you buy an Apple product, you're paying about 40 to 45% more for the amount of computing power that you're getting than you would be paying if you were buying product from a competitor company. Their margins are incredible as a result of their ability to charge those marked up fees. Okay, Apple only spends, all told, about 50 cents on the dollar to make each iPhone, and the rest of it is pure profit. About 50 cents on the dollar of each iPhone. Each iPhone's price goes back to Apple as pure profit. Company right now is sitting on, I think it's a $170 billion cash pile that they don't know what to do because they have so much money. Okay, so they've got an enormous profit pie to divide up. Some stakeholder classes at Apple do very well as a result of their enormous profit pie. One example of that is owners. Okay, the owners at Apple, the shareholders, have been benefited very much. Apple's stock over many, many years has been incredibly successful, both in terms of capital appreciation and also in terms of dividends. So the owners have been incredibly highly rewarded by the profit pie at Apple. Suppliers, much less rewarded. Apple under Steve Jobs became notorious for using cheap Chinese labor, okay, in factories where the working conditions were notoriously bad. Working conditions were so bad in Apple factories in China that they had to install suicide nets because so many people were jumping from windows in these factories. They had fences around the factories, dogs patrolling the perimeter. Things have gotten a bit better at Apple factories because of the spotlight shown upon them by American journalists, European journalists trying to alert customers in the Western countries to the very bad working conditions in Apple's Chinese factories. So Apple has cleaned up their act there to some extent, but the suppliers, I would say, still aren't a stakeholder class that is especially benefited at Apple. Employees, it kind of depends on who you are as an employee. Okay, some employees are very, very much benefited, financially speaking, at Apple. Management and high-tech employees are incredibly well compensated. The CEO makes nearly $1 billion a year, counting his stock options. Other high-level management participants make not $1 billion a year, but very high amounts of money. Okay, lower-level employees, if they are corporate employees, they do pretty well. If they are mall employees at your average store, they do reasonably well as also, okay? Apple's got a lot of money and they offer a lot of benefits. They're able to offer a lot of benefits as a result. But if you are one of the assembly employees who doesn't work stateside but works in an overseas location where the iPhones are actually made, then odds are you're not treated very well at all. So it kind of depends on which employee you are. Okay, community. Apple gives back a lot more to the community now than it used to. Famously, under Steve Jobs, they never gave any to charity because Jobs didn't believe in giving to charity. Now, under Tim Cook, they do give a lot more to social causes. So he's decided to spread some of their profit pie around that way. Government, Apple does not pay very much in taxes. They make every possible effort to avoid paying their taxes, actually. They have incorporated themselves offshore. I think that they are currently an Irish company domiciled in the Cayman Islands so as to avoid American taxes. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. It is legal what they do to avoid paying taxes, since they are not an American company. They are an Irish company domiciled in the Caymans. Although, of course, everyone knows they're an American company, right? So it is legal to do that. At the same time, when a company like Apple, which is pretty clearly an American company, is structuring itself so as to pay virtually nothing, they pay almost zero in taxes. Amazon, I think, does similar things. They pay almost zero in taxes. You have to wonder whether we need to change the tax laws to keep companies from being able to do that. But they operate within the bounds of the tax laws. Customers. Customers exhibit high loyalty to Apple. They have a strong reputation for reliable products. Their products they last. They're very reliable. At the same time, they do charge customers enormous amounts of money for those products. So in terms of financing, Apple requires customers to pay much, much more than those customers would otherwise have to pay if they purchased similar products from competitor companies. So it kind of depends on which stakeholder you are. Some companies do well at equitably dividing up the profit pie among different stakeholders. In other companies, what it ends up looking like is kind of maybe a struggle between different classes within the company. And at Apple, if you're part of the managerial class or the technical worker class, you're one of the winners. Whereas if you're part of the less privileged classes, you tend to be a loser at Apple in terms of the way they divide up their profit pie. Apple is not alone. A lot of companies, I'm just using them as an example because they're such a well-known company, but a lot of companies struggle in practice to make the stakeholder view an applicable view. So the big criticism of the stakeholder view that I want to focus on then is that it is a view that is too idealistic as a way of conceiving of the purpose of the company and the way that the profits in the company ought to be divided up. Let me pause and ask if there are questions or comments about the Starbucks case, about the stakeholder view, or about any of the things I've just said about Apple as an example of a company that doesn't do the stakeholder view very well. Questions or comments about that?
I have a question.
Yeah, Abraham.
I don't understand too much of the role of community as a stakeholder.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you just elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to review one more time, the stakeholder view is that the business and the profits of the business ought to be aimed at dividing up its profits among its various stakeholder classes. That ought to be the purpose of the business. And some of these stakeholder classes are pretty clearly directly tied to the welfare of the business. The owners, the employees, even the suppliers. Others are a little more tangentially tied to the welfare of the business. The community, for instance, or the government. The justification for the community as a stakeholder class goes something like this. Think about the success of a large company like Apple. Apple's success is very much a product of the hard work of the employees themselves inside the company, but it also is a result of other things outside of the company, such as the fact that its at least its corporate headquarters and its various different outgrowths of its corporate headquarters are in America, which is a very stable business climate that offers abundant opportunities for business success. It employs workers with high-tech skills. A lot of those workers get hired out of universities where Apple's workers have been pre-trained with incredible capacities that they would not otherwise have. Apple delivers its iPhones to its stores on roads that have been maintained by somebody else besides Apple, the community. And we could go on and talk about the various different ways in which community support is responsible, at least in part, for Apple's success. Certainly, you don't see any company like Apple arising in, I'm going to just pick on a country. No one's from Venezuela, right? Okay, yes, I'll pick on Venezuela. You don't see a company like Apple arising from a country like Venezuela with so many social problems like they have there. It's pretty clearly only a company that can arise in a stable country with a stable monetary system, stable community involvement, things like that. Some companies do real well at giving back to the community. An example here in Texas is H-E-B, the grocery store. They have a strong reputation for community service, community involvement. They're one of the big supporters of the local rodeo here in Houston. I hope that starts up again at some point. They give like immensely to inner city after school programs. They offer lots of opportunities for educational advancement through scholarships for minority students, through minority student funds and things like that. So H-E-B is an example of a company that prioritizes community involvement. There are other examples. One case study I was going to try to get to today, but I'm not going to have a chance to do so, is another Texas company, Bluebell. They do a lot of community involvement and stuff. So, yeah, thank you. Good question. Okay, other questions about the stakeholder view or about the Apple case or any of the things I've been talking about? Pull out your business ethics and action texts. I will show you guys. I didn't really focus on the text today because I wanted to mostly to lecture and just sort of get to know you guys and talk a little bit. But if you pull out your text, pages 152 through, I guess, 175 or so, 174. This is a chapter talking about the purpose of a company. And on page 160, there is this discussion, the discussion that we had in our lecture today. For whose benefit should a company be managed? For whose benefit should a company be managed? And the text says here, two main answers are often given to this question. One is for the benefit of the stockholders or shareholders. That's the Friedman view that I articulated in Monday's lecture. I hope you get to see the video. And the other for the benefit of all stakeholders, including stockholders. So the shareholder approach or owner-centered approach is the one view. And then on the next page, 162, the stakeholder approach, which is what we just talked about in today's lecture, is the other view. And the second proposal says the purpose of the firm, and I'm reading here, is to serve as a vehicle for coordinating stakeholder interests. This is a quotation, the corporation ought to be managed for the benefit of its stakeholders, its customers, suppliers, owners, employees, and local communities. The rights of these groups must be ensured, and further, the groups must participate in some sense in decisions that substantially affect their welfare. Management must act in the interest of the stakeholders as their agent, and it must act in the interest of the corporation to ensure the survival of the firm, safeguarding the long-term stakes of each group. Okay, that's the ideal, at least. The purpose of the company should be that on the stakeholder view. And in practice, of course, as I mentioned in the lecture today, that ideal often doesn't get realized, and companies turn into hierarchical power struggles where some groups within the company win out over and against other groups and take all of the profit pie or something. But that is at least the theory behind the stakeholder view. Okay, and I commend to you the rest of that chapter. Please do read it, and it will explain some of the other things that I talked about in today's lecture. Does anyone have any final word on the day? It is good to get to know you all finally. Sorry about the start of the semester. This is a semester like no other. What a wild beginning to the semester. But here we are, and it's good to see you all. Please participate by Friday in the discussion board. I will upload a question. I'll try to do it this afternoon. Just respond to the question, and that'll count as attendance. Just a quick response, a couple of 3 sentences will be sufficient. And I will see you next week, okay? Take care. Good to see you all.